So thanks for joining us this morning. This morning, we're going to run through the P6-QA tool. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm joining you today from Calgary. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and doing the heavy lifting is Marilyn Backstrom, joining us from Edmonton. She's one of our long-term implementation specialists. She's got tremendous experience, and she'll touch on QA, and both she and I can explain a few of the examples and clients that we've used this tool. Now, let's talk about why did we build this software tool? Why do we want to have a tool that helps us critique the schedules? So let's talk about how we built it, why we took the strategy of embedding it right inside of P6. Okay, so P6-QA, from a user's perspective, they don't see it as a separate tool to P6. All of the items that we put together are inside of P6. We do have some that go out to our P6 reporter, so we have reports that go out that way as well. But the data out there is all readily available to the user in P6. Now, we built it because one of our ideas in our company is we have to keep working ourselves out of work. If a client keeps needing us to do something, we're not doing our job. Our job is to empower them first and foremost. So we were being hired many times. We still get hired here and there to do this, to critique a schedule. And what we found was it was a bit of a frustrating exercise because we're coming in usually before a stage gate, some sort of criteria that we have to do an analysis of our schedule. So it was done at the last minute, done in a panic, and we would be pretty much picking apart our poor client's schedule at a very late stage of the game. So kind of a very frustrating position to be in. So we said, well, instead of doing this like this at the last minute, let's try and empower them to see where the gaps are in their schedule as they're building it. Okay, so that's really where P6-QA came about many years ago, over 10 years ago. And we just started to build it more and more up to a tool that we started to sell because we had more and more clients interested in it so that they can critique their schedules themselves. Okay, so that was the way we built it, why we built it, and sell it to those who feel that they need this kind of tool in their organization. So in terms of critiquing, what are we critiquing? Well, we're critiquing all sorts of things, actually. We have different things that we can critique, but first and foremost, with a schedule, we're looking at timing. So is our logic, is our sequence of work, does it hold together? So that's the first layer. Resourcing is a big thing. So years ago, Oracle did an analysis with their clients of how many people use resourcing. And it was about 60 to 70% of users were using resourcing. So that is the next layer, of course. And less we're using costing. So maybe 30 to 40% we're using costing. So we also can critique that. So we're critiquing all those layers. But not only do we critique those layers, we can also critique your business processes. Okay, so you might have certain naming conventions, certain activity codes that you want to make sure you have. So those are things that are not scheduling per se, but the part of how you want to use P6 well. So we can do business process adherence as well. So not only do we check that you've got a consistent schedule, it's reliable, we're looking at the business processes as well. So those are some big things that we've got available in our tool that I don't think you can find in any other tools out on the market. And our tool is meant for all P6 users to be able to critique their schedule, not just your senior scheduler who has his standalone, very expensive software on the side that does the critiquing. Okay, so it's really meant to empower the whole team. Okay, so in terms of how does it work? So I mentioned that we look at schedule quality. So that's looking at the logic, kinds of logic, durations, float, Those are the kind of things that you look at with schedules. You look at constraints. I mentioned we can look at resources. We also look at updating. So we're not just critiquing a schedule prior to use, but also during its use to make sure our updating is holding together. The dates we've put in our updates, do they make sense? Are they after the data date? That's not cool if you've got that. Our resources, did we update the resources? Things like that. So I think Mary Lynn should have time to show you some of those in action. So we're checking the schedule, of course. Now, with what we've put together in the tool, we match and surpass many standards out in the marketplace, okay? So depending on where you work, you may have encountered the DCMA checks, and those are used by governmental agencies, the GAO, another governmental agency in the US. These are primarily American examples. And then we've got AAC, PMI, and a few other standards out in the marketplace. So our tool meets them and surpasses them for the kind of checks that we've got. As I mentioned, we've got business process checks, okay? Things like activity ID naming conventions, activity names, project naming conventions, a variety of things, okay? Resources, expenses, steps, all those sorts of things. But even better than that is we have the ability to add additional checks. If you have things you want done, we can add them. Okay, so that's really the benefit. And then they're right embedded in the P6 tool. So your users just get trained up on what's there and then off they go. Okay, so very lightweight in terms of training required for your team as well. Now, the standards that you put on or the validations or the checks that you put in place, they can vary per project. So you're not forced to only use one strategy on how you want to do your monitoring. Because of course, if you're doing a capital project or an operations project or a shutdown or turnaround, very different criteria will exist for those different kinds of projects. So you'll be able to introduce that into your P6. What kind of project it is. I'm working on one right now. It's a massive IT program. And what we need there is very detailed scopes of work for the next 30, 60, 90 days. But if you're working on a very long range plan, again, you're going to need different criteria. So P6-QA will accommodate that. And the way you're going to validate, depending on the phase you're in, will be quite different. If you're at a proposal stage, you may have higher level activities that will be longer because you're not going to do the deep dive to do a level 5 schedule at the proposal stage, right? So depending on the phase or stage of your project, going to make a difference as well. So we can handle all that. And we can add additional monitoring items as well. Now, the way we sell the tool is on how much monitoring you're doing. Okay, it's not per user. It's per how much monitoring you're doing. So if you're doing 10 checks on a 100 activity schedule, that's 1,000 points. If you're doing 50 checks on a 10,000 activity schedule, that's a much bigger package. Okay, so that's how we sell the software to try and be fair, make sure that you can use it, but not have to pay as much as someone who's got huge schedules and way more activities. Okay, so that's how we sell the tool. So we can run through the tool and then we can have more conversation with any of the questions you come up. Okay, I think I've touched on the main points. I will pass it over to Mary Lynn so she can show you the software in detail. Coming your way, Mary Lynn.
Okay. Okay, just before we get started, you can see P6 on the screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Just want to check every so often. I get the bar that says it's displaying it, and then a couple minutes later people say, we can't see that. Okay, so what we want to go through here, P6-QA. I'm right now in the project tab, and we'll go through different pieces of this, but just the overall picture that you've got here. I've got my projects, and I've got different, in this case, schedule quality elements and icons that right away you can see, is it checking out okay? Or is there something in there I need to check? So right away you can get a feel for how visual this is. Now all this information can go over via snapshot to things like Power BI reports. So before we get right into the P6 piece, let's have a look at that. Now, if I go in and I want to have a very quick look at validations, this report here, you've got three different pieces of information, really. You've got the check, the result, the target. You've got activity validation summary. Now, how many times have you gone in to run checks and maybe you don't have P6-QA? What you're dealing with is checking everything in layouts on your activity tab. Not saying you can't get there like that, but it is a lot of time consuming, tedious work to get there on large schedules, especially. Well, when you check with P6-QA, you can create what's called a snapshot, which is takes the information at the time you take the snapshot that feeds these reports. So you can go in at any time and you can see, how are you doing? So I've got logic missing. I do have a problem there. I've got hard constraints. In this case, I've got 87, it's indicating it's passing, and on down the line. But it makes it very visual, very easy to check and see what's going on there. Now, that's where this information that we're going to look at in P6 can end up. So if I just have another look here, I've got activity variance history. So it'll track it because each time you take a snapshot, that's a snapshot of the information that's in your P6 schedule at the time. So of course, you can set a time scale and you can track elements. This one is average duration, average predecessor count by start month. So all that information is at your fingertips. You've also got activity count histograms. So you can route the information in P6 out to reports, those are Power BI, and make it very, very easy to keep an eye on progress, on what's going on with your schedule. So if we look at our schedule, now as Nicole mentioned, P6-QA runs inside P6. So I'm not stuck with having to export my project, import it into another software package, and start running the information. Don't have to do that at all, which is a very nice time saver. Now, when depending on what you're dealing with here, you may be building a project and you want to run P6-QA to check, am I missing logic? Do I have activities with high duration, as you can see on the screen, high float, that kind of thing. But does it stop once your schedule is built? Not in my world, it doesn't. I forgot to mention to you, I've done the scheduling piece for a number of years. So this particular tool, as Nicole mentioned, running while you're doing your updates can be very helpful as well, because you get updates. Maybe people are putting the updates in your schedule. Maybe they're being routed to via an import. But once the updates are done, if there is open ends, if there is problems of different kinds, hard constraints have been introduced, things like that, and you go and schedule your project, it can really create a lot of work for you to go and basically fix it. So this will let you know what's going on. So when we go in, you'll see there's a couple columns here that say EPDW snapshot. So as I mentioned, you can run P6-QA and then you can pass this information over to a snapshot. That feeds the report you just looked at. So that is available if you want to have a look at doing that. So if we want to look at some of the information that you would normally be checking, before I go to the activities tab, you'll see in the notebook tab down here, there is some reports. And I'm just going to pull this up a little bit so we can see it a little bit better, because I'm going to open these. You'll notice you've got sections. Business process validation. Nicole mentioned you've got your business process validations available. Here's DCMA, schedule quality, client specific, statistics, GAO, NavAir, a project calendar report, which was a client request at one point to be built in. So you've got different sections that give you the different checks. Now, if I want to look and see, what does my schedule look like right now? Well, if I just click on schedule quality and I just click modify, this notebook will open to where I can actually size it. This is a P6 thing. I always say it likes to jam and cram a lot of information into a very small space. So you're usually having to edit your windows here. But you'll see here is my set of checks. Now, the very first check, all activities missing predecessor or successors. It tells you what the target is. It tells you the actual percentage, the remaining percentage. So in other words, you can see if it's a progressed file, you can see what's going on there, actual and remaining. So activities that are missing predecessors or successors, this project right now has 11. And it gives you some more information, including you can put weighted scores in here. And if I go down a little farther here, you'll see it gives you details on each and every check. Now, this is something that I find extremely advantageous because it's nice to know the roll up, but then if I go down, all activities missing predecessors and successors, I can see what the check is, I can see the results, and I can see in a lot of cases, you won't see all of the elements you need to go and check because it gives you a certain number. Clearly, if you had 100 in each one of these checks, you would have an awfully long report. But you can definitely get the activity ID, etc., and go and start looking at them. But there's an even easier way to look at them inside the activities tab. So we'll come back to some of these, but what I'd like to do is go in and show you what the activities part of this looks like. So I've got this file open, just a little demo file. It's a very short file. Now, when you come into this particular layout, there's a number of layouts that when you purchase and install P6-QA, my apologies, excuse me. Try and get rid of the frog in my throat if I can. So when you go into P6-QA, there is a number of layouts that you will receive, or you can receive. You can build your own as well. So you can see I've got P6-QA, and you can decide what elements you want to look at in a certain layout. So I could say schedule quality just for logic, or schedule quality, all of them. I could mix schedule quality with business processes, with whatever else I need. Create what's convenient for what you're usually looking for. So that's all the layout is doing, pulling together the information that you need right in front of you at the moment. You save it and you can go back and look at it all the time. So if I look at what this is telling me, QA/SQ, overall validation, I've got some red stop signs. So I definitely have some activities that need my attention. So I'll go down to this mining engineering section here. Logic missing. Okay, I've got 3 activities there that have logic missing. 2 of these activities, if I look at the top, they are missing a predecessor. these two, then the 030, the second one down, and the third one are missing successors. So I know I've got some fixing to do, basically. Now, if I want to verify what that is actually telling me, what I can do is just click on this activity, and I'm just going to go into my activity details and look at relationships. Now, this particular check is telling me I'm missing a predecessor. I am missing a predecessor. I'll go to the next one. Whoops. That's interesting. There we go. Next one is missing predecessor and successor. And the third one, missing a successor. So let's see what happens when we fix this and then we rerun P6-QA. So in order to fix this, what I'm going to do is just select all of these activities, and I'm going to just link them, just for the sake of looking at what this actually looks like. So link activities. So if I go back to the one that said it doesn't have logic, you can see it does have logic in it now. Now, these particular icons are not going to change automatically. I need to go and rerun P6-QA. So what I'm going to do here is just go back to the Projects tab, and I'll show you how easy it is to rerun this. So this is the project I have open, and all I have to do is take out the last run date. Now, I've got it set on manual. That means I'm asking it to rerun it now. You'll notice that on the screen here, there is projects that are running monthly, running weekly. So you can have it automatically run at regular intervals if that's what you need, or you can set it at manual and you can rerun it when you need it. So depending on the circumstances that you're dealing with there. So I'm just going to hit F5. Not quite, probably just another minute or so. But what this allows you to do, and like I said, I've been in the scheduling world for, let's just say, a long time. I find since the availability of this tool, it makes checking for what you need to go back and fix so much faster, so much easier. Now, like I said, you can get a lot of this information from creating layouts in P6. And I've done it that way many, many times when you don't have a tool like this, but you're going down the line checking, because you do end up with a fair number of layouts that you actually have to go and check. And here we are, it's rerun it. So let's go and see what those activities look like in the Activities tab. So if I look at my activities here, I have cleaned up some of the issues. And as a perfect example, if I went in and I thought, okay, I've cleaned up all the issues with the logic in that section, and I rerun this, and I go back and look at it now, gives me a real good visual. Yeah, you fixed some of them. You didn't get them all, though. So you've still got some fixing to do. So that's just an example of what this can help you with. Now, if you are going to create a schedule, and in a lot of cases before a project starts, that schedule has to be submitted for review. Well, if you're running a tool like P6-QA, it makes it that much easier to make sure everything that the committee or the management approval task force is looking for in the schedule before you submit it has actually been looked after. It's actually there. So that kind of scenario is extremely helpful for. So if I go down here, you'll see I've got some more activities that have logic missing. I also have some that have high float. Now, you can go in and make changes a lot of them at a time, then rerun P6-QA, or what you can do is you can update or fix a few things and check as you go, depending on what you need to do. So if I go back to the top of my layout here, just have to get my mouse on the right screen, sorry. So if I go back here, now when you look at the icons here, you can see there's a few different things showing up here. So I've got red stop signs. I've definitely got a problem I need to look into. Green, we're fine. It's just reinforcing, yes, that's been checked. It's all good where you've got the green. Now you'll notice you've got yellow in here. Well, you can set criteria inside P6-QA as well. So if you're looking to set criteria, when you set up your checks and tell the software what checks you want it to do, you'll see that some of them, for example, if I said my successors, I'm okay with it having 1%, or I'm okay with durations being 40 hours. But anything larger than that, I want tagged. Now, I might say between 40 and 50 hours for a duration is a yellow flag. In other words, it's something I need to look into. And anything over that would be red. So you can set criteria that way as well. And we'll look at that a little more in just a couple of minutes here. Now, if I go across this layout, you'll see where all of these column headers are different checks. So I've got high float. I've got 3 with a issue here. These are all milestones. Well, if a milestone is missing some logic, you are likely going to have huge, huge, huge float, because a milestone is a point in time. If it's got an open end for successor, that kind of scenario, it will go to the end of the project for the calculation of the float. Now, I've got float variance, and it's giving you the variance here. Duration variance, and it's giving you the variance here. So it's not just the icons that you've got available. You've actually got the numeric information available as well. So any of these pieces of information, it's very easy to see where you've got something that you actually need to look at. So when we talk about milestones, now, if I've got a scenario where a milestone, you want the software to ignore it. In other words, don't flag it as an issue. Maybe it's something that's got a constraint that's in your contract. So there's really not a lot you can do about it except connect it to the end of the project. You can flag it so the software will ignore it. Now, you also, I'll just go down to project controls here for a minute. And you'll notice if I look at this particular activity, this is level of effort. Now, overall validation is failing on these, and it says high duration. Well, very often level of efforts have an extremely high duration in some cases. So what I can do is I can tell the software I'm okay with that. So I can actually go in and I can say, okay, I'm okay. I've seen this. This blue star will tell you at a glance you've seen it. You've said, that's okay. I know why the duration is high. So if I check that, whoops, this one didn't save, sorry. So if I set these at a blue star, like I said, that tells the software I've looked at it. I know it's being flagged as high duration, but I know why, and it's okay. I'm okay with what it's doing. So in that case, if I'm looking at my report, high duration, and then I flag these, it's going to take them out of being reported as high duration in the report. You'll still see the blue stars there, so you'll know it's something you checked. So at that point, all I need to do is go back to activities, and I could run this again. Now, if I look at my schedule quality validation, and I go down and look at my high duration. Just bear with me 1 second here. I can just go in and rerun this. And where you go into the report, I think it would be good if I could show that. Just my apologies, just bear with me 1 second here. And I'm just going to find the high duration one. Whoops, wrong one, that's why. Always do that, my apologies. I'm looking for schedule quality. At one point, it was the first one in the row. It's been changed for a while, but I always manage to trip over that one. So what I'm looking for is my high duration. So let's see what it's actually reporting in the high duration. Here's my duration high. Whoops. So you can see down here what it's reporting. It says I've got 8. So if I look at that and then I go and rerun this, whoops. And I have to close that. That's what it's upset about. As soon as I can get it back, I will close this. Okay, there we go. Close it. Now I can rerun it. So what I want to do is close it, rerun it, and let's just have a look at what it does with the report, because those ones that we put the blue stars on will no longer be reported as high duration. Once this is run, we'll look at some criteria that you've got available as well. I did mention that you can set your criteria with what percentage do you want to use to flag, okay, if it is, I'm expecting this target, where do you want it to flag, whether it's just green and red or whether you're doing the yellow as well. You can go in and you can set that inside the software. And once you've got your criteria set up, most often you've got parameters on a project. So you're not going to need to go in, at least not very often, go in and change that kind of scenario. But if you do need to, you can definitely do that as well. Now, for schedulers who are just learning to check for parameters in their schedules as well, if you've got some junior schedulers on board for your project, this is a tool as well that I've had comments from people saying it's been very educational for them. That was the word they used, not me, because they were getting used to checking for certain elements before they incorporated their piece of the schedule into the master, that type of scenario. So you've got a lot of different possibilities for it. So I'm just going to, whoops, don't want to do that. I want to hit F5. And it's rerun it. So let's go back to our project here. And I need to go down to schedule quality because it does default back to the first report, which I tripped over once already. So let's go and have a look at what our high duration looks like now. Here's our high duration, and we've got remaining 5 now. So it does adjust the reports as you go along. Oops. So now, if we've looked at a very simple change to our schedule, you rerun it, you can see the results right away. We make a change to tell the software that we've wanted to ignore something because we've checked it, we're okay with it. We can take it out of the reports. Now, these reports, by the way, if I click modify, these reports can easily be put into Word, that type of scenario, if you need to use them in that context. They are a text file basically. So just some additional facts here. Now, what happens if I need to look at duration and float specifically? Well, inside the Activities tab, this is where we were concentrating on the logic piece. Let's have a look at duration and float. What kind of problems do we have here? Well, we have another layout that you do get with the software, but you can create your own as well, as I said. Now, if I open duration and float, so it's just a simple P6 layout. So inside P6, all of this is just running off of P6 functionality and allowing you to use the P6-QA information inside it because it's not a separate tool. So if I go in and I look at my high duration and my float columns, well, you can see here, these are the high duration ones that we flagged in the other layout. So anything you flag in one layout, that flag is attached to the activity, and it's still going to be there if you open it up in another layout. Now, high float, this particular check, you can see what's going on here. Now, depending on what you've got going on, I've got, if I go down to my extraction construction and I open my details, I'll just bring it up a little bit here. If you look at the duration, you can see definitely why it is flagging it with a high duration, and it's flagging it with high float. This is a level of effort. So this is another one that you would probably be telling the software as far as the duration tag. If it was flagging as high duration, which it is, you can actually put the blue star in there and rerun it. So that type of a scenario, again, because of the fact that we know that level of efforts, because of the nature of what they are, this first one is level of effort. This one could have the blue star because by the nature of what they are, they very often are very long activities. Now you've got different columns in here as well. This one is duration and float. You'll notice there is columns for constraints, all that kind of information as well. Now, when we're setting criteria, where do we need to go to set the criteria? Well, if we go back to the project tab, so criteria on these checks are set at the project level, of course. So that's where you would be looking to go to reset, or to start off with the project, set the criteria that you require. So if I go in here and I want to look at criteria, I'm just going to open another layout that'll make it easier for us to see that. So if I go into open, and you'll see I have, and this is at the project level, just a reminder, because that's where we need to set these. So if I go into 0 to a schedule quality criteria, and as I said, there's a number of layouts. So what you need to see, you can create just the same as you do in any other P6 layout. So we say open. Here is a layout where if you need to go in and set your criteria or update your criteria, you can see how easy it is to do that. So if I'm looking at setting criteria, if I go, this is my file right here, just to make it easier to see here. So high duration percent, 2%. High duration target hours, 960, and on down the line. So I won't go through and read every one of them, but you basically just type these in to set the criteria. And if you need to change the criteria, you make the change and run the tool again, and it will give you the information against whatever your new criteria is. Now, you'll notice that you've got activity not updated percentages as well. Nicole did mention that there is a number of checks. So let's have a look at, this is schedule quality. Let's have a look at business processes. So if I go into a different layout, now all of these checks are connected to, all the settings for the checks are connected to the project they're set for. So if I go in and I open another layout here, here's my business process criteria. Now I can review, and if I need to, update the business process criteria as well. Now, there is a number of business process criterias. One of them you can see in this first column here. I won't go into exactly what this is designating, but it's telling the software that your ID in your project for your activity ID should have a certain format. This check is very helpful on some schedule, all schedules, but some more than others, because I've worked on contracts where the way the schedule was set up, your activity ID, the way it's broke down, would tell what report it needed to go on at the end of the month. If that activity ID was not correct, you got problems. That report is not correct. So this would allow you to check it very, very easily. Now, you also have duplicate activity names. Now, I don't know how many of you have worked on turnarounds, for example. I have worked in the world of turnarounds for a while now. And one of the things I find a lot is there's a lot of schedules out there that are not careful with repetitive names or duplicate names. This will check it for you. And you're saying that 2% are allowed, but it'll check and let you know where you've got duplicate activity names. Now, I don't know if that's one you've ever tried to review in layouts in P6. It's not easy. So this one is going to give it to you right away. And this is very, very helpful because, just to give you a quick example, I've run into a lot of cases where when you start a turnaround, you're installing scaffolding. And I've run reports, and you probably think, no, it can't be that bad. Yeah, I've run reports that were 40 pages long with all of the activities that said install scaffolding. When that goes out to the field, that's a big headache for them. So you want to put more information than that in, more difference in the actual name of the activity. This is going to tell you where you've got all those duplicates before the reports hit the field. So we can set different criteria. That's just schedule quality and business processes. Now, we've also got business process indicators. So the business process indicators, one of them here, you can see activity ID. We'll just use that one. The pattern, is it correct? Is there duplicates? Let's go look at the actual icons so that you can see what that actually looks like. So I need business process indicators. Whoops, there is a layout in here for it. Sorry, I think I went past it here. Here's indicators. So here's business process indicators. Activity ID format. There's some schedules in here that definitely are not passing that particular scenario. Duplicate activity names. Well, the file that we're looking at doesn't have any duplicate activity names. So you set your criteria, and you don't really have to go back to that layout after you do that on your project unless there is reason that you need to go and change something. You can create a layout or use this one, whichever works, and look at the indicators, and this is extremely visual, so you can see right away, where do I need to go and look at what's going on? Whether it's schedule quality, whether it's business processes. Now, P6-QA will also check for mandatory codes. That, in my world, is a very big one, because many times we've helped clients with, okay, this report is not pulling out the numbers that we expect out of P6. And you go in and you find out you've gotten an update or something from a subcontractor, or somebody's done something in the schedule, and the code or set of codes that pulls the information off that activity to the report they're looking at isn't there. So those numbers didn't go. So you will have a bit of a problem with that. So now what I'd like to do is just show you also, I'm just going to go to a different project, which actually has some updates in it, because the one we've been using so far, there is no progress in it. So when you go into looking, I'm just looking at the time, sorry. So we do want to get to the updating piece as well. So I've opened a file that has some progress in it. But now what I want to do is I want to go in, and there is, again, a layout in here that will give me pretty much a bird's eye view of some of the functionality that is going to let you look at issues with updating. Do I have a problem with the updating or not? So I've got some layouts here. You'll notice there is some updating problems one here. I'll just open one of these, and you can see, just a food for thought, some of the things that it's checking. Actual dates greater than the data date. This is actually a filter that for years and years I ran after every update on schedules, because this nice tool that will go in and check it for you and give it to you right on your P6 screen wasn't available. It hadn't been created yet. So now this tool will do this for you. And by the way, you can use these for sorting if you need to create a report of the activities that have the actual dates greater than the data date. You can get it out of the reports we looked at, the project level, but if for some reason you need to show somebody on the screen, that's an option as well. So if I look at this particular activity, now this activity actual is greater than the data date. So if I look at the actual date, which is right here as well, so 23rd of June, 0800, so 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, if I look at the schedule data date, at first you might think 23rd of June, it's not greater than the data date. It actually is, because this is 00, this is 08, and it's tagging it. So it does check down to that type of granularity. You have missed tasks. So if tasks weren't updated when it was expected that they should be. You also have resources over budget, which is one that is very handy to be able to pick up really quickly instead of having to run pages of reports. You have no resource actuals. This one is another one that, depending on the circumstances that you're dealing with, it's always valuable, in some cases more so than others. And I'll give you an example. I've been at 2 different client sites where somebody wasn't clear how they should be updating activities in P6. And as a result, the actuals were not calculating. Unfortunately, we found that out after about 300 activities had been updated incorrectly. Now, this will tell you right away. So another check that you can check. Just some examples, some food for thought, because what you want to make sure is you've got a way of checking for your typical update issues: remaining duration greater than original duration, actual duration greater than original duration might be another one. Activities finishing late, mandatory codes and disciplines missing, all of those kind of things. can be checked really quickly inside P6-QA. And as I mentioned in the beginning, once you've done that, you also have that information going over to reports. Now, we looked briefly through this report. This one gives you a very high-level view of what's going on in your schedule, where you've got big issues. And now what we want to have a look at as well is you've got other options. And one of the ones that I wanted to show you is this one. I realize we're running out of time a little bit, but DCMA detail. Now, you could create a report like this that isn't necessarily the DCMA checks. Maybe it's your schedule quality checks, but it's a different way of viewing the information. So you've got the check, you've got the result, and you've got results over time here, and you've got your graphs here giving you which ones are passing, which ones have warning on your DCMA checks. So I will pass it back over to Nicole, and I hope this has given you kind of a preview of what's in P6-QA and food for thought for how it can help you.
All righty. Thanks, Maryline. I'm just going to get back sharing. Good. So hopefully you got a good feel for how the tool works, the sort of depth that we can go to in our quality checking, and how easy it is really to use and deploy to your team. Okay, so it's very easy to learn, very handy to be able to get these checks readily available right side in P6 as you're working. Okay, so you're not in that panic mode before a stage gate review and having to try and come up with metrics and whatnot. So in terms of outputs, so Marilyn showed you the output using our tool called P6 Reporter. They're two separate tools that we sell as add-ons. You can push it out through, in this example, a Word document out into BI Publisher, via BI Publisher out into Word. There's many different ways to get the data report out. So really up to you which way you want to do it. Those notebooks that she was showing you, right, in P6, some of our clients copy and paste those out into emails. So lots of different options in terms of getting that out. So hopefully you saw some interesting potential benefits, and we've got lots of clients that have given feedback on it. So as we mentioned, very easy to use. So even for folks who are not full-time schedulers, they can understand the outputs. One of my clients that I used this tool with was a big developer in New York City doing a huge $600 million tower. My direct client was the CFO, didn't know anything about scheduling, did not have a scheduler on the team. So our job was to help them deploy P6 and critique the schedules coming from the contractor. So we were able to critique 8,000 activity schedule in less than 2 hours. Enough to give him enough meat to go back to the contractor and point out some very glaring problems with the schedule. Okay, so the tool works very well. It's very easy to use. And of course, the speed, I just gave you that example. That's the quote from this particular example. And the idea that you can see a critical path problem very, very quickly is a huge, huge win. Okay, so we had some questions that I was answering during the session. So how do you deploy it? So this tool can be deployed within your own corporate environment on your servers, if that's how you want it. If you're out in the Oracle cloud, you could deploy it on our cloud and point it at the Oracle cloud, because it works using the APIs from Oracle, the web services from Oracle. So you can deploy it there. If you've got your own cloud environment, can be deployed there. So we've got many different deployment models. And as I mentioned, we've got different packages for the amount of actions you're going to do. So we've got 3 key different layers: standard, professional, and corporate, all about the number of schedules and tasks and quality metrics. So if you're interested in any of that, just reach out to Mary Lynn, and here, her contact info is here. If you're interested in any of that, wanted to understand a bit more how this could work for your organization, reach out that way. Good. So we want to thank you for attending today. Hopefully you got some benefit out of the hour you spent with us. If your team is heavy users of P6, take a look at our website. We've got a lot of fantastic add-ons. This is one of them. We've got P6 Loader to help move data in and out via Excel. We've got different updating tools. So our TAPS tool, which is a barcode scanner, super fast, fastest way to do updates. Our CAPS tool, which is a web app for updating. Along with QA, we have a calculator tool, which will allow you to add all sorts of different calculations and functionality to P6. So we've got a lot of add-ons. Take a look at some of them and join some of our webinars or reach out. And we're here to try and make your use of P6 better, more effective, more efficient, more valuable to your team. And that's what these tools really bring to the table. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. Quick question. Can we also buy this for our standalone P6 software? Yes, it's possible to do a standalone option. Yeah, so just the same sort of thing. The packaging we would need to install it on your machine, your standalone machine, and the packaging price is still the same sort of thing. It's based on number of points that you consume. So yeah, reach out. We've got lots of different options, and we can also run it as a software as a service. So if you just have one schedule, you want us to critique it for you, that's also an option. It's not really our preferred option because, of course, you're not getting the day-to-day benefit, but we have done that for some clients as well. Okay, I'll stop the recording here. I don't see any